So guys, what's going on? I hope you guys are well. So guys, obviously we know now Manny Pacquiao will be taking on Errol Spence Jr. in a massive showdown. For me, the biggest fight of the year so far. It's an absolute, it's broke the internet. The boxing fans have gone crazy, and I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised because Manny Pacquiao is obviously showing the fact that he's a warrior, showing the fact that, even at the age of 42, still got the hunger and desire and still wants to fight the best. It's incredible stuff by Manny Pacquiao. And why I did this, why I wanted to do this video is because I wanted to talk about Manny Pacquiao and Errol Spence have chose their path. They've chose each other to create, like I said, the biggest fight of the year and an historic welterweight fight. There's another guy, and his name is Terence "Bud" Crawford. And I don't know what he must be thinking right now. I don't know what he must be feeling right now, because Manny Pacquiao was in discussions with Crawford for a very long time to do a fight. For a very long time, and it looked like Manny Pacquiao and Crawford were going to fight. Terence Crawford right now must be thinking, oh my, I don't know what he must be thinking, but he must surely be gutted. Now, he does come across a type of guy that doesn't really mind and mind his own business, but surely there'll be something inside of him that would be deeply upset, because he's struggling to get a big name, whereas now his competitor, his rival, who is Errol Spence, has managed to get a massive fight. Massive fight. While Crawford is still waiting for that dance partner. That big name. Where does Crawford go from here? Where does he go? Who does he fight? For me personally, I think it's got to be Sean Porter or Ugas. Surely the Ugas fight is a fight that could be made. It's a unification fight. It'll put Crawford in a good position as well if he can beat Ugas. He'll be a unified champion at welterweight. And then that will, obviously, the winner of Pacquiao Spence will probably, it'd be a huge showdown between Crawford and the winner of Pacquiao Spence. If Crawford could beat someone like Ugas or a Porter, I think they're the only options out there for Crawford. I don't know whether Crawford is looking for the Ramirez and Taylor winner, but I don't know whether that's going to cut it. Especially when your rival in Errol Spence is fighting Manny Pacquiao. I don't know whether people will be happy with, Terence Crawford. At the end of the day, Terence Crawford doesn't care what makes people happy. He's looking for credible opponents. He's looking for good opponents. Now, I'm not saying Ramirez, the winner of Ramirez or Taylor, won't be a credible opponent. It will, but after what Spence has done here with Pacquiao, I just don't think. I just don't think that would cut it. I think a Ugas fight would be a good fight, because Ugas is currently the WBA champion. And Porter is obviously a top welterweight and considered a top welterweight. So that would be a very credible fight. And if Crawford can win, a very credible win. But right now, even if he has those fights, right, I personally think a fight that could trump or be a big fight, and it won't trump Spence Pacquiao, but it would be a big fight. It would be Crawford v Thurman. And I personally think someone like Thurman right now may even consider that fight. So if I was Team Crawford, the problem is with Crawford, Thurman, how big is that fight? And that's the real issue for Crawford, because Crawford's pulling power, he hasn't got big pulling power. So Spence and Pacquiao would be getting paid a bomb to fight each other. The reason why Bob Arum and Crawford were trying to get the Pacquiao fight, because that fight would sell itself. The problem is with a fight with Porter, that fight's not that big. Even Thurman, you could question how big is that fight? You know, who else? Ugas, that fight's not even as big. That fight's even smaller in terms of, in terms of size of the fight. You know, I don't think Ugas has that kind of name at all. So really, the fight's even smaller. So Crawford's in a position where no matter what wherever he goes now, unless it's an Ugas fight where what he will be gaining is the belt, and he'll be gaining another belt, and he'll become the unified welterweight champion, and that put him in a great position when he goes to the negotiation table. But are PBC, who represent Ugas, gonna let Ugas fight Terence Crawford? I don't think so. I don't think so, especially when they know that there's a great chance Crawford wins that fight, because they kind of like putting Crawford in a corner where Crawford, I think his contract runs out with Bob Arum. Let's see what he decides to do. If he leaves, becomes a free agent, he might even go over to the PBC. We don't know, but we really need to see Crawford. We really need to see Crawford now step up in terms of fight the top welterweights. I think, people were speculating he might fight Josecito. Those type of fights now, unfortunately, won't cut it. He needs to fight Thurman, Porter, Ugas, guys like that, because now his competitor, a guy that he's been talked about, that people want to see him fight, is Errol Spence, and he's fighting Pacquiao. He's coming off wins against Mikey Garcia, Sean Porter, Kell Brook. He's fought Lamont Peterson. I know it was an old Lamont Peterson. Danny Garcia. His resume is starting to get thicker. Now he's going to fight Manny Pacquiao. So Errol Spence's resume is becoming thicker by the fight. Whereas Terence Crawford, on the other hand, his resume, it's a lot of guys that were kind of past their best, or guys that didn't have a huge profile or weren't elite fighters. So Crawford needs a big name. He needs big names now. He needs big names. And even then, like I said, the names that I listed, they ain't big fights. They're not anywhere near the Spence-Pacquiao fight. So, like I said, whatever he does, he's not going to be able to trump Pacquiao-Spence. But at least if he gets an Ugas fight, it'll be another belt. He'll be unified champion. He'll have more power at the negotiation table. Even though now I think Spence is pulling away in terms of pulling power, in terms of name, fame, and wins on resume. Spence is pulling away. And if he was able to beat Manny Pacquiao, which is not going to be an easy fight, then his resume becomes even stronger. And to be honest, I wanted to talk about, is Errol Spence a harder fight for Manny Pacquiao? I believe it is. I believe it's a harder fight in the sense that I think it's a more risky fight, because I think Errol Spence's size, strength, power could be a problem. Whereas I think Terence Crawford, on the other hand, Terence Crawford's a guy that can outbox you. He's fast to feet. He could probably outbox and maybe win a points decision. So, the Crawford fight would be a lot more tricky, because Crawford's, for me, got a few more dimensions to him than Errol Spence. But the Errol Spence fight is a brutal fight. It could get very tough and very rugged, and Errol Spence is very big, very strong. He punches very hard. He's solid. He's got great fundamentals. He walks you down. He's a pressure fighter. And at this stage in Pacquiao's career, that's going to be very taxing, because the stamina, Errol Spence, he walks you down. He puts it on you, as they say, pressure burst, puts a lot of pressure on you. And at this age, can Manny Pacquiao, can he keep Errol Spence off and keep him? I believe he can. I believe Pacquiao has enough power where if he hits Spence, Spence is going to feel it, and, he's going to be hesitant coming forward. And I think Pacquiao will have to hit Spence with a couple of good shots just to let him, let's let him know that, listen, you can't just keep walking forward. But yeah, I do think Spence is a very, very difficult fight. It's a very, very difficult. That's why you got to give him a lot of credit for taking that fight and taking that leap, because, like I said, it's a tough ask. It's a hard ask. It's not a task that's impossible. And Manny Pacquiao could potentially pull off what I believe would be an upset win. It's not beyond Manny's reach. But having said that, it is definitely a tough fight for him. It's definitely a tough match. But in terms of Crawford's going to have to figure out what he's going to do next, because it looks like Spence and Pacquiao have locked horns. They're going to take part in probably the biggest fight of the year. And Crawford, on the other hand, is, struggling to get an opponent. They're talking about waiting for him to fight Taylor Ramirez. But is that really going to cut it? If Taylor Ramirez, whoever wins that fight, fights Terence Crawford, is that fight really going to cut it? Yeah, it's a great fight. It'd be a good fight. Big. The winner of the 140-pound undisputed championship. Winning of all the belts. The undisputed 140-pounder coming up. I don't know whether the fans are going to want that fight, to be honest. I think they would rather see a Porter fight or maybe a Danny Garcia fight than him fighting the winner of Taylor Ramirez, because I don't think anybody really gives those guys any chance. I don't really think those guys have a great chance of beating Crawford at 147. I just think Crawford's too versatile for those guys. But at the end of the day, where does Crawford hasn't got, there's no options. I don't think they'd let Crawford fight Ugas. I just think they'll keep all the belts in-house, within the PBC stable. Now, we don't know the situation contractually with Crawford and Top Rank. What's going to happen with him? Is he going to leave? Is he going to stay? We don't know. If he does leave, then obviously it'd make it easier for him to probably make a fight with the PBC fighters. Or he may just stay with Bob Arum. Might be content. But I think from what we've seen that Crawford is not happy, and maybe he probably will leave Top Rank. And maybe that might make it easier for him to get those fights. But I do think this may be the last time we see Manny Pacquiao. Especially if he loses. Even if he wins, it may be the last time we see Manny Pacquiao. So I don't know whether I think that Crawford-Pacquiao fight is gone completely. So Crawford's going to have to, like I said, he's going to have to wait for a Spence fight. The problem is with that is now Spence is on the negotiation table is going to be so powerful, because especially if he beats Pacquiao, because you can imagine, right? Look how this fight was announced and it's broke the internet. Imagine as this fight gets closer, how many people are going to be talking about this fight, the media behind this fight. It's going to be huge. And Crawford needs something like that. Crawford needs to be involved in a super fight where there'll be huge media where his name can get out there. And unfortunately, Crawford's not really been involved. The Khan fight was fairly big and the promotion was fairly good behind it. There was a lot of push here in the UK as well for that fight. Unfortunately, the fight didn't really live up, because we had one guy that was past his best in Amir Khan. And even that fight, let's be honest, that was his biggest pay-per-view fight, and that only did 150,000 pay-per-view buys, or 100, whatever it was, 150. So yeah, Crawford he needed a Pacquiao fight. He needed that fight more than Errol Spence needed that fight, to be honest, because Errol Spence could have fought for Ugas, and Errol Spence himself is starting to build quite a big following. Whereas Terence Crawford hasn't got that, and he needs to. And the way he's going to increase his popularity is by fighting the top welterweights, being involved in great fights. Otherwise it's going to be very difficult for him, because time is running out. Crawford's not getting any younger; he's getting older by the day, and it'd be a waste of talent if he doesn't get in there with all the top welterweights. But right now, just seems tough for Terence Crawford, because there's no real options out there for him. Like I said, the options are Taylor Ramirez, winner, and obviously they're fighting this weekend, so that the winner could potentially fight him in 4 or 5 months' time. But is Crawford just going to sit on, you know, on the sidelines for another 4 or 5 months? Or obviously, when they're going to make the fight? You know, Taylor Ramirez are going to fight, and it looks like Bob's targeting one of those guys for him. I wouldn't really be excited for either guy to fight Terence Crawford. To be honest, I think the Porter fight, or even if Terence Crawford moves up, man, even if Terence Crawford moves up and dares to be great, tries to, you know, like, look, Pacquiao at the age of 42 is fighting Errol Spence, right? A guy that's way bigger, a guy that's stronger, a guy that's got all the physical advantages over Manny Pacquiao, but yet he's daring to be good. Why can't Crawford, he's in his prime, who hasn't really been in many tough wars, especially in fights, I don't know, sparring, but in terms of the fight itself, Crawford's made pretty easy work of a lot of guys he's been in the ring with. It's not been very tough, and that's the brilliance of Terence Crawford. But I think he needs a big fight. He needs those big marquee fights for him to take his name to that next level. Some people just don't have it. Some people don't have that star appeal, and their name never grows the way, you know, you expect a pound for pound fighter's name to grow. But yeah, hopefully Crawford can get a big fight. Hopefully Crawford can get a massive fight. But yeah, it's looking difficult as of right now, because like Spence and Pacquiao are now tied up fighting each other. And if Spence wins, like I said, he's only going to become stronger on that negotiation table. And at that point, it'll probably be fair if he asks for a higher split, because his name after the back of the promotion of this fight is going to go through the roof, right? He would be beating a legend, right? And then his resume starts looking very, very impressive. And it's just a bigger profile fight. For Spence, this is the biggest profile fight he could be in the welterweight division. There isn't any, even the Crawford fight for me wouldn't pay him as, I don't think it would pay as much. I don't think it'd be as big. I think this is a huge fight. But that's just you know, the Crawford Spence is a 50-50 fight in terms of, that's a fight that everybody wants to see, because they think stylistically they want to see who would come out on top, because they're both great. But this, from a profile point of view, is a way bigger fight. So that's my take on it. Leave your thoughts. What do you think next for Terence Crawford? Do you think this is a harder fight? Do you think the Errol Spence fight for Manny Pacquiao is a harder fight than Terence Crawford? Leave your thoughts in the comment section below, guys. Let me know what you think. And guys, remember to please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.